Miguel Iturrate and Devin Miller, the CRP's MMA team, back online here, and we're ready to talk the UFC on ESPN 3. A lot of rumors swirling around the top of this card as the UFC is looking to fill up the April 27th slot. The main event, previously Yoel Romero versus Paulo Enrique Costa, a middleweight bout with title implications. Costa, a fast-rising star. Now the news comes in that Costa is out of this fight and is being replaced by another veteran, Ronaldo Jacare. Jacare and Romero have a history, and they can present that fight on ESPN 3. But a lot of people are wondering what happened to Costa. Devin, what have you heard?
Well, I mean, there has been, just looking at the physique on Costa, who Adesanya has been getting the most attention as a rising star in this division, but Paulo Costa has been kind of slept on. He's undefeated, young fighter, and he was willing to go up against Yoel Romero. But just looking at the physique of Costa, there's been a lot of people on the internet that have questioned, is this guy doping? And USADA and the UFC, I actually struck a deal, like I think in the middle of last year, that they're going to stop reporting initially when somebody's popped with a drug test, because they're going to let them go through the courts and see what a verdict's made before they announce it. And probably the most famous case since that happened was Sean O'Malley, who, when he got popped, he got out in front of it and came out and said what happened, why he's not on the card, why he's getting pulled from a card, and he didn't actually have to do that. So there's been a lot of speculation, but like I said, that's speculation. It could be an injury. It could be that they have different plans for Costa. But regardless, we're going to get a good rematch here with Romero, who is still ranked as the number one contender at middleweight, even with Gastelum and Adesanya fighting next month at the 236 card for the interim title, and while Robert Whittaker is on the shelf after his hernia surgery. So this is still a very big fight. They got Jacare ranked at number 3 right now. Luke Rockhold ranked at number 2, and he's been talking about moving up to light heavyweight, and he lost his last fight to Yoel Romero and hasn't been very active in the past several years. So this is a very significant fight, and most likely we're going to see the winner of Gastelum and Adesanya fight the winner of Whittaker, but the winner of this is going to be right in line right after that. So this is a good headlining fight, and it's the best replacement they could have done with Costa no longer in this main event against Romero.
It's a rematch. What do you remember about the first encounter between Romero and Jacare?
Not a very exciting fight. It was a very close fight. It was they kind of stalemated each other, and one thing I'm wondering is if this is going to be a main event, because I'm not sure if they've announced it officially as the main event of UFC on ESPN Network 3, or if it's going to be the other potential fight that we're going to talk about, because a 5-round fight with Jacare and Romero could make a difference. And Jacare looked great against Chris Weidman, and Romero is always dangerous. So this will be an interesting matchup.
And as you mentioned, the other fight we're talking about, rumors swirling around this card, it looks like they are looking at a potential lightweight bout. We just did a lightweight roundup a short period of time ago. They're talking about matching up Tony Ferguson and Iaquinta. I'm a little surprised Ferguson kind of, is taking this fight, or seems to be on board with it so fast, although he seemed to also be the odd man out in many of the other scenarios that we ran by this division, since he turned down the title fight. So maybe he's just getting back with the program. Iaquinta and Ferguson, kind of a dangerous fight for Ferguson, don't you think?
Yeah, I think this is really the UFC called Tony Ferguson's bluff. I think that they offered him the interim title fight with Max Holloway. He turned it down. They said, all right, we'll go a different route. We'll go with Dustin Poirier. And then Dana White's coming out saying, we don't know where Tony fits in this division, and they can't drag Khabib into the cage. So it's either Tony's going to have to sit out and possibly wait till November, and there's going to be an interim title holder, and he might not even get that fight, or he's already cost himself the interim title fight, and now he's got to get back in there. And I do think Iaquinta is a dangerous fight, and the reason why this is being rumored, it's coming straight from the horse's mouth. Iaquinta shared a tweet that he posted on April 25th of 2017 I think this is before the first fight that he had with Kevin Lee. I could be wrong, or it might be after that. But he just fought Kevin Lee again. He's got 2 wins over Kevin Lee now. And he made a tweet back then in 2017 saying Kevin Lee couldn't throw a punch to save his life. Well, he retweeted that tweet. So he went up and looked into that tweet, found that tweet, retweeted it, and he captioned it, yet, ... he dropped Tony Ferguson. And then somebody gets on there and says, well, why don't you fight Tony then? And he says, I've already agreed to it for April 27th. Now, that doesn't give us any indication about Ferguson. There hasn't been any headlines saying that this is announced or even that it's rumored. But when you're hearing it from the fighter himself, that's interesting to me that they're going for that. And I also saw a rumor that with the Conor and Cerrone negotiations seem to be falling through, that somebody told Brett Okamoto of ESPN that Dana was looking at possibly matching up Cerrone and Iaquinta. But this is coming from Iaquinta's mouth, so I think that this is a good indication that this possibly could be a fight. And I think this is a very, very good fight and a dangerous fight for Tony if it happens. But if it does, we've got a pretty good ESPN headlining card with 2 good fights, with a Romero and Jacare rematch and an Iaquinta Ferguson fight.
Now, let me ask you a question, because wasn't Iaquinta retired at some point, kind of left the sport or took a hiatus, and then, now he's back and stuff, but is that aspect of viewing him kind of as a part-timer or a guy who's just looking for a big spot, is that the wrong way to look at him? Because Ferguson, that's about as, 100% dedicated to pro as you're going to find, and could that be the difference in a fight between the two?
Well, I would say so, and what you're referring to is correct, because Al Iaquinta notably had a big feud with the UFC not long ago over money and stuff, and he's got other avenues. He's a Long Island boy. He trains over there with Ray Longo and Matt Serra. He's got into real estate, and he's got other avenues for cash. But fighting is in his soul. That's what he loves to do. And he had a lot of harsh words to say about the UFC there for a while. But they seemed to make it right with him. He was scheduled to fight Michael Chiesa on the famous week last year in February, when Khabib was set to fight Tony Ferguson for the 4th time. Tony Ferguson trips over a wire, gets injured a week before the fight. They try to move Max Holloway in there on short notice. They get to weigh-ins. Max Holloway is told to quit cutting weight by the commission. He can't fight. Left Khabib without an opponent, and the only person that made weight in that for that division that actually made championship weight and wasn't over was Al Iaquinta. So he kind of fell in the right place at the right time, took the fight with Khabib on 24-hour notice and went 5 rounds with him. And then he came back, I think in either late November or early December of last year, and won another decision win in a 5-round main event on Fox against Kevin Lee. And so it seems like him and the UFC have sorted out whatever issues that they had going on, and he looked really good. Not only did he manage to stay in the fight with Khabib for 5 rounds on short notice after training for somebody that wasn't near as good as Khabib, but then he beat another top contender, Kevin Lee, and looked very good in that fight. So, and he's not really a guy that makes a lot of mistakes. So, and if there's one issue with Tony, is Tony does make himself vulnerable to getting hit. And I think Al would be the better wrestler in that fight. So, stylistically, that could be a tough fight for Tony Ferguson. And with Al Iaquinta pulling off a win in that fight, it just makes this division seem even more complicated, because now Tony goes to the back burner, and now we got Al Iaquinta looking at a title shot.
The UFC is looking at adding fights to the UFC on ESPN 3 card scheduled for April 27th. I've been joined by our MMA analyst, Devin Miller, to talk about the potential behind Al Iaquinta versus Tony Ferguson and Yoel Romero versus Ronaldo Jacare.